Hello, welcome to the Curmudgeon in the Cellar. Got a lot of things to talk about tonight, and I guess we'll just get right into it. Mostly these are in response to questions or follow-ups, comments on previous ones. And at the end, my own little thing in honor of the season. So tonight we're going to start, let's see, I'm trying something new here so you can't see me looking away. All right, somebody asked me if I'd ever gotten back reconciled with Gary, and the answer to that was yes. Back when it was Lake Geneva Game Convention, I went to a couple of those and had a couple of Kringle mornings on the porch with Gary and his second wife, Gail. I remember the mornings fondly, found out more about what had happened, how it had happened, how his hands were tied when it happened. So came to understand a great deal of what had been going on behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of at the time. And so, yeah, we reconciled and had a couple of great mornings out on the porch with Gary. Great times. Didn't know Gail was going to turn out like she did. Certainly the first impression wasn't like that. So to answer that question, yeah, we reconciled and everything was cool. Let's see. Trying to read my notes over here. I was asked if I was aware of his legendary game, Legendary Adventures. Yes, I am. To be honest, he'd gotten more and more into skills and abilities, and as a way of shorthand, I think it was shorthand for the role playing, and I wasn't terribly fond of it. It had some really good ideas and interesting ideas in it, but I didn't care where it had gone to. Now, having said that, I just happened to have in my possession a handful of copies of the bestiary for that thing that are signed and numbered by Gary, and certainly can't have any use for more than one. So if you're interested, let me know. In any event, now my own little commercial aside, let's see what's next on my list. Someone asked me what was the favorite story or adventure that I published in Dragon Magazine. And this is one of those cases when I really honestly can say I don't have a favorite. If I had to pick one, it might have been The Finzer Family by Harry Fisher, just because of the interesting slant that he had. But it was geek central for me. I got to publish pieces by Fritz Leiber and Medium, Gar Fox and Medium, great Gardner Fox. If you don't know his fantasy and his swords and sorcery, look him up on Google and see what he did for the world of comic books. L. Sprague de Camp, I got to publish a story of his. The Neil of the Nine Travels was great stuff. The Finzer Family was great stuff. Getting to publish an L. Sprague de Camp that hadn't been done in a long time. I got to republish it, basically bring it back out for a new generation. I found that all to be extremely exciting and just geeked me out no end. So did I have a favorite? No. Oh, I got to start my timer. I want to make sure I don't get this as really long tonight because I got a lot I want to talk about. So I didn't really have a favorite. So I'm sorry to comp out like that. They were all my favorites. Getting to publish or republish, as the case may be, some of your absolute favorites from the childhood of your reading experience is really, really something else. Then I was asked in another comment, and this is an idea that has intrigued me, that I might consider, and that is, I guess you'd call it broadcasting or hangouting or whatever, one of my games. I haven't done that, but I've thought about it off and on quite a bit for the last couple of years about the possibility of doing that. I think that if I were to do something like that, I would want a format that would allow me to see all the players' faces. Because I think reading tells and sharing smiles and having an expression that as GM, DM, they can read and realize that maybe we want to rethink that. So there's so much that goes on at the table that I'm interested in trying it someday. I don't know how many people can we get in a Skype game, something like that, because I want everybody to be able to see everybody. I think that's just so important to about what role playing is about, is that interaction at the table. But I'll give it a try sometime if the platform was right. And that now I know there's other platforms. I'm not aware of how they function. So I'm a babe in the woods in that regard. But yeah, it's possible I might do something like that. Years ago, I played a PC game with people all around the world at the same time. And I really got off on the novelty of playing this turn-based strategy game with people from Russia and Australia and England and two other guys in the States and me all at the same time. So that idea, I find, has great appeal. So, if the right circumstance were to arise, yeah, I could do that. I'm doing a new kind of adventure that I did again, and we had great fun with it. And it would lend itself well to single night adventures that would just be for fun, similar to how a convention adventure might be, 3 hours, or, that's an awful long time to sit on your fanny in front of a computer screen. There'd have to be at least one or two potty breaks in there, just as I always do in my face-to-face games at the cons anyway. But yeah, it's a possibility that I've considered, but not a great deal. All right, let's see. I'm trying to read. I apologize. I gotta pull this down. Sorry about that. What is this? I'm gonna have to figure that one out. Not sure, but I got some other stuff to talk about here. Boy, it's bad when my handwriting gets that bad, or else it's that late at night. But I'm not sure what it is. Oh, yeah, the silliest thing that I'll talk about later. I apologize for my hemming and hawing there. Let's talk about, somebody asked me about what it was like to work with the various artists at TSR. And to be completely honest, the only two and a half that I ever worked with would have been Dave Sutherland as the original artist. And then Dave Trampier came and was in-house. And Tom Wom was in-house. But all the rest of the artists that I worked with, it was completely a mail thing, a snail mail. I would end up meeting them when TSR hired them after seeing the stuff that they had done for me. Then TSR would get their address from me, or they'd already have it because I had to file copies of all the payments I made and everything. And anyway, if they liked them, they would contact them, and boom, before you knew it, they'd be working there. David LaForce, who's now known as Diesel, Errol Otis, Jeff D., all did stuff for me first. One of them, at some time when they were hired by the company, ended up upstairs in my building, living up there for a couple of weeks until they found a place in Lake Geneva. And I don't remember which one it was. I was just informed, and I said, okay, fine. That means that I get 35% off on the rent this month, so you'll pick that up, right? And they did, so it was all good. But I didn't, I got to work with Dave and Dave Sutherland, and Dave was a good guy to work with in the beginning. He wasn't terribly busy, like it later became when he became the art director. He didn't have 4 irons in the fire at once. He was always doing something for one of our things coming up, or a point of purchase or a banner or whatever he was working on at the time. And if I needed something, in the beginning, if it was for one of the books that I was working on, that was, he was there for that reason, or for that, to fill that need for me. And if he was doing it for the magazine at the very beginning, if he was doing it for a strategic review, it was okay. And then as the magazine spun off into its own division, TSR Periodicals, then his time was pretty much curtailed in that he was not being paid by me in my division. He was being paid by TSR Hobbies. Tramp was a different story. Tramp came in and basically declared that, yes, he'd love to do stuff for TSR Hobbies, but he would in no way stop doing stuff for Tim at TSR Periodicals, and he got away with it. So working with him was a delight. And of course, as I related earlier, we became fast buddies, and we gamed together, and we tanked all weekend. And if we weren't playing micro armor on the sand table, we were racing little race cars and breaking them up on concrete walls. My wife really liked Tramp. He was always a total and complete gentleman whenever he was over at the house. Very, very respectful, very great guy. Tom Wom applied through me for a job at TSR by sending me a 3-page illustrated comic of him applying for a job. And it so impressed me, I immediately took it to Gary. Gary looked at it and said, hire him. So he ended up being employed by Hobbies. But I got to bring him into the fold. And I don't know, a couple of checks might have come out of my accounts until he was firmly established in Hobbies, whatever. But then he did stuff. We did the Snitz games. We did Awful Green Things from Outer Space. Tom's a great, super fun guy to work with. Unique individual. Tom and I go back to college. Would have been late 1972 that I first met Tom Wom. So it's quite a while ago. He's certainly the oldest gaming friendship that I have, that I kept up. The guy I played with back in grade school and that, I have no idea if he still plays. We went our separate ways. But anyway, I'm getting off the track, and I'm not supposed to do that. So that was what it was like working with them. Most of the time, it was through the mail. And I go, Otis, whoever. I got, I'm thinking about something for Christmas. And so I ended up with a great cover of this toy soldiers coming out from underneath the tree attacking. It worked. It was very good. It brought the artist to the attention of Hobbies. Hobbies ended up hiring him. That was the way it worked. I found him, and then they gave him gainful employment. I just paid him well as freelance. And I paid very well, considering I had no competition. I could have paid less, and they'd have been glad for it. But I felt fair was fair. And the same with the way I paid my authors. I paid what was considered top rate at the time. And you look at it now and consider today it would be the equivalent of about 8 to 12 cents a word. Considering with the inflation and what it was. In any event, that was my extent of interacting with the artists on a regular basis. Tramp as a friend, we interacted quite a lot. Okay, now we're going to talk about two game things. Had a very interesting comment about, can I please explain psionics? What the hell were they? Psionics was all about Doctor Strange, the comic, and the damn brain mole and mind flayer. There were popular stories in the pulps about these creatures from different dimensions, different planes, what have you. I'm checking my clock didn't start. Bummer. Oh, that's not good. It's going to be a long one tonight, I'll bet. In any event, there were in the pulps. There were these monsters in Lovecraft. These things that floated around in the ether, not exactly in our plane, but not exactly out of it, and they would get into your mind and drain your mental faculties, and you'd be a drooling idiot when it was done with you. And so that's where the brain moles and the brain mole basically, in terms of D&D, sucked intelligence points out of you, and you kind of scrap that character if he was severely afflicted. The mind flayer was really something from another dimension or plane that, not unlike anything else in the game, no recognizable European mythology, Asian mythology, nothing like that. And they just got a hold of you and ripped your brain and turned you into an idiot. And if it wasn't permanent, might as well be, because they would just so befuddle you that then you were easy prey. And psionics was part of the thought that, and this was going on in the 50s and 60s in popular science and magazines like this, about the untapped power of the brain. We only use 15% of the gray matter up there. Let's harness it. And so science fiction took it to brain waves that would control you. Psionic, psychic shock that would render everyone in the room stunned or befuddled or something like that. The whole thing about the silver thread and traveling away and all that in the astral plane, that's straight out of Doctor Strange. So I felt that if we were going to introduce more stuff that screwed with your brain, and we were introducing the mind flayer in that supplement, it would only be fair that somewhere there'd be the rare occurrence of someone that had these psychic powers. There would be a genetic, what they call a sport. Two normal parents have an offspring with different characteristics, a new characteristic, whatever. And so it was a teeny weeny little bitty chance that you might have a little bit of psionic capability. Well, the way games were played back then, everybody's rolling for psionics, and they're running around brainwaving each other, and it's not something that I ever used in any of my campaigns. I don't use psionic monsters in my convention games. If I were to write an adventure that had psionic monsters, there would be devices or amulets or tinfoil hats or something that would counteract them, because giving monsters that power to literally rip your consciousness apart is a huge weapon that had no defense. And that's probably why a lot of those things have fallen out of disuse, or they've been house ruled into minor annoyances or migraine headaches or something. But that was that was psionics. Now, coming along in the same vein, from the same time period, the pulps in the 50s and the 60s, they were getting into liches and vampires and undead things, so they might not have called them liches back then. But these things from another plane of existence, or in this some cases, non-existence, if you will. They all had described this chilling, bone-chilling cold that if they seized you would just wash through your body. They often, these again are the pulp authors, that you would go into an area with these and there would be a chill in the air. All right, now hold that thought. Keeping in mind that hit points, as originally determined and originally intended, was the ability to avoid a fatal blow. Tricks learned, blows parried, body skills learned, instinctive responses, wash on, wash off. Okay. This is what makes hit points. Level drain was intended to show just how enervating, just how completely draining, both physically and mentally, and sometimes morally, being corrupted by this, being touched by this creature from another plane of existence, this creature of pure evil, whatever. It just literally took it out of you. That was it. It just took it out of you. And that was level drain. You weren't the same afterwards. You could become the same again by re-earning those, because again, hit points were a rather amorphous, inclusive concept of training and fitness and tricks learned. And this being sullied by the undead had such an enervating effect on your mind and your body that you lost some levels. Now, there are some people that in this argument, this discussion that I've been following up and down on Facebook, that say that they drain stats. If that's the way you want to handle it, pardon me, I can see where you could be much more selective. Drain 4 points of intelligence. Drain 3 points of constitution. Okay, if you have a mechanism in your campaign, in the way you play, that those can be regained to permanently siphon off 3 points of intelligence, as opposed to draining somebody 2 levels. The levels can be regained. You might even end up with more hit points when you re-roll those 2 dice. And that's another thing I always did. I always took all the remaining hit points, did an average, and took the lowest number that they lost when they lost the levels. Okay, so they ended up with, for their level, tougher people, because, hey, break's a break. And I felt bad for them too, because I never just spring traps like that on somebody that's going to just drain a level. Level drain is one of the most ferocious tools the Dungeon Master has, and should be respected as such, and certainly should be feared by all player characters, because who wants to spend all that time regaining that? You can either scrap the character or you can regain those skills. And I'm not gonna. I'll probably work something. I would work something out with one of my players to make it as painless as possible, but still a penalty of some worth. Yes, quite a lot of worth. Let's see. Level drain. Oh, no, I have no idea why somebody asked me this next one. But let me make sure I got this here. Yeah, somebody asked me about what I did in the Navy. It's like, gee, Daddy, what'd you do during the war? Set the stage. I was graduating high school in 1967. The lottery was not yet in place. I was a January birthday, which meant that when I graduated in June 5th, I was 18 and 18 years, 5 months. My draft board was pulling people at 18, 6, and 7. I really didn't want to go to the jungles. So a friend and I went and talked to a couple of recruiters, decided to go Navy. Good prospects of training. I knew I was smart, so I'd do well on placement tests and stuff like that. I wasn't going to end up swabbing decks or, slamming shells into cannon breaches. So I decided, rather than get drafted, I'd go in the Navy. And it was supposed to be a 120-day cachet program. From the time we were sworn in, we didn't have to report back for 120 days. Well, that was my first screw job. Maybe I had to report back in like 67 days or whatever. And so I started my career early. Went to boot camp at Great Lakes. I went to Memphis for advanced training in electronics. And I happened to be there from late 67 into the early summer of 68. And for those of you who know your history, there was a history-changing event happened in Memphis during that period of time. And I happened to be downtown that day. I'd gotten permission to go out of school to go hear Martin Luther speak. And with a couple of my Navy buddies, bunch of northern liberal white guys. And we had girlfriends at Memphis State University, it was called then. And so we went and picked them up, had some time to kill, went to the movies, came out. Martin Luther had been shot. The city was in flames and rioting. And that was one of the more terrifying weekends of my life. And then I got stationed out with Beyond, and then I went overseas. After a while, I worked my squadron flew A6s, intruders. At the time, they were the most sophisticated aircraft in the American arsenal. They could fly themselves in the middle of the night in a thunderstorm and hit somebody on a bicycle with a 500-pound bomb. I maintained that system that hit that guy on a bicycle. And I worked on the flight deck. And that was habit forming for the adrenaline of working on the flight deck. It was only after I came back and had been out a little while that I found out that statistically the flight deck was more dangerous than combat, which I also got involved in a teeny bit of that a couple of times too. So that was interesting. Came back from Vietnam, got married, brought my wife Cheryl out with me for the last year. I got out 100 days. I got out 100 days early, short of 4 years, and went on to junior college. And then the story picks up about the phone call and all that stuff. So that's my background in the Navy. It was a good time, for the most part. There were some very horrifying, scarifying times. Made some good friends at the time, a couple of whom I still correspond with at least once a year at Christmas. People thank me for my service if I'm wearing my cap, and I tell them it was my pleasure. You know, you give a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds all those guns and bullets, say shoot that way. Of course, we're going to have fun. Let's see, I don't know. I learned a lot about growing up. I got to see some really interesting places. I got to go to Japan, the Philippines, Hong Kong. Hong Kong's magical. I wish I could go back, but I don't have any desire to under its present circumstances. And then I have, really, that's you know, I'm grateful for the GI Bill. That's how I went through college, and that's the end of my Navy career. I have a brag box up on the wall with I made E5 in 19 months, and they made me wait 21 and a half to sew it on. Those of you who've been in will know what that means. Those of you who don't, I made the equivalent of an Army sergeant in a very quick time because I was in a nerd rating. And then I have, to wrap this up in honor of the holiday tomorrow, or actually it started a few minutes ago, what I'm calling a gamer's thanks. And first thing I'm thankful for was that guy named Gary picked up a phone and talked to this stranger who called him up to bug him about some stuff, and what transpired after that. Along the same vein, I'm really, really, really glad that, well, first off, for my car. My car, as a very young man, still in high school, and came designs Fight in the Skies, and showed the world how to do percentages in 5% increments with 2 6-sided dice. And people started to think outside the box. Everything at that point had been a CRT, combat results table. Everything was rather simple. If you had 4 4-point units attacking a 6-point unit, you had 12 to 6, 2 to 1. You rolled on the 2 to 1 chart with a 6-sided die. Rather limiting. Then somebody, Minnesota, Wisconsin, I don't know who, honestly, saw the Edmunds Scientific Catalog. Amazing book. I've loved that book all my life. And in it, they saw the Platonic solids for the math teachers. About rolling, they were for teaching geometry, the Platonic solids. They were for teaching probabilities. We call them polyhedral dice. And now game designers could really look in new directions on how to design games, because they were no longer tied to that little 6-sided square or manipulating 2 of those little 6-sided squares. So I'm very thankful for that. Very thankful. Let's see what else. I'm thankful that Kickstarter has been available for some very good designs that have come out. It's given people with a good idea the means to share their good idea. And let's see what else. As a gamer, what am I thankful for? Well, I think those are the 3. That's the most stuff I'm thankful for. Pack that one up. Those are the 3 things for which I'm the most thankful at this point in time. Hope you have a great Turkey Day, or had a great Turkey Day by the time you see this. And keep those comments and questions coming. And I'll keep doing these and try to keep them interesting. Ciao.